So good morning, or good afternoon, I guess. Welcome to the RMA webinar, Think and Disrupt, where we're going to interview and discuss at length with Dr. Min Basadur the groundwork required to for innovation and creativity to happen in an organization. And first, let me begin with some ground rules. We are recording this and we will post it both on the Basadur.com site as well as on the Response Marketing Association site. My name is Derek Lackey. I'm the chairman of the Response Marketing Association and the host of Think and Disrupt. And our guest today is Dr. Min Basadur, a global leader in innovation. You graduated from Cincinnati University with your PhD, if I understand correctly, when you were working with Procter & Gamble and really driving innovation within Procter & Gamble. And you then went on to McMaster to head up the innovation program at McMaster and to develop your Basadur.com and Simplexity, I believe you call it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you properly introduce yourself, Dr. Basadur, because I would butcher it. You can do it far more accurately. And what I want the audience to know is that you're not just a guy in a diner when it comes to innovation and creativity. You are an authentic expert. And maybe some of your background can display to people or set up for people who they're listening to.
Yeah. Thanks, Derek, for setting this up. A key is what I learned to do did not exist at all, and I made it up as I went along. My background is right now I'm sitting near Toronto. And I devoted a good portion of my life in Cincinnati to develop what I do. I was very lucky. I took a degree in engineering physics at Toronto, not knowing what I wanted to do and figuring that was kind of wide open and hoping for the best. And there were lots of engineers that they were interviewing for at that time. And I ran into they didn't really care about your undergraduate degree. They cared about you. And I ran into Procter & Gamble people. And they sounded really, really good. I didn't know what I was doing. And they said, give you a choice, which is pretty good if you don't know what you're doing. We can put you in the factory and you can have a manufacturing career, or you can do something called research and development. I never heard of research and development, so I jumped into research and development. And I found out the plant was in Hamilton, Ontario, and I really enjoyed working there. And what I was pretty good at was making things happen, as opposed to being an expert in this, that, or the other thing. And I got a reputation of being kind of a guy who was interested in processes of thinking. They sent me down to Cincinnati. Don't worry, come back in a couple of years if you wanna. Well, I ended up in Cincinnati with headquarters, huge place, and much more open. Many people you could interact with. They stuck me in a brand new division called Industrial Products, which is new. And I had a lot of fun because it was very unstructured. It was basically me and sales and a few other people. It was just fledgling, and we had a lot of fun. And we ended up making all kinds of products you could put in a drum or a bag. And I'm thinking, wow, this is pretty good stuff. And at the time, the company was thinking we should put some more bureaucracy around this thing, bring in people who are going to make this work. And I learned the hard way that I could make great products. But what I could really do, I could interact with customers and try to make our products work and work with them. And little by little, I began to realize that my work in helping people do stuff was more important than whatever I was producing in R&D. The company recognized this and sent me down to headquarters downtown, where I began a career in basically doing changing stuff, making it better. They said, we've got industrial engineers who can make change in factories, but you can make change in all kinds of places, R&D, marketing, etc. And that began my career. And I discovered what I could do with people was many people were very bright at whatever their job was doing, but when it came to solving a problem, they were very weak, and especially they didn't know how to define problems. I enrolled in the evenings. They sent me to University of Cincinnati. I ended up taking all the courses and doing a dissertation, which won an award in 1980 as the best dissertation in industrial organizational application. And what I discovered when I did my dissertation, I said, you know what I'm going to do is it's going to be on creative problem solving, which is what I was doing. And it's something that you can't, you've got to experience it. So if you're teaching people how to defer judgment and divergent thinking, it's not something you just tell them and they go do it. They have to get trained well enough to really understand it, experience it. Otherwise, you're going nowhere. And I wrote this dissertation and it won this award. And it was based on, I was so fortunate. I was working with the company I was able to work with subjects all through, engineers, etc. And now I get this PhD, and along comes McMaster University from back in Canada, where I'd left 14 years ago. We are going to start offering courses in organizational behavior. We think you'd be a good fit. And I took a big gulp, because now that I got, by the way, I was getting assignments from Ford Motor Company and Frito-Lay saying, we don't know exactly what you're doing, but we think you can work with people and we'll need you. So I gulped and I actually said, okay, I'll go to McMaster, and I gave myself a name and or the organization, and it was called the Center for Research in Applied Creativity. At that time, creativity was something that was kind of fun and games. You just throw things at people and have a good time. And I said, no, it's applied creativity. And what I want to do is I have a career, a dual career. One is I don't want to just be a teacher. That's good. I just don't want to be a consultant. That's good too. I want to do them both. And for the next 20 years up until now, what I've been doing is research to get my associate professor, full professor, and also do the consulting that I do. They go together. So basically that was the idea. It's applied creativity, which today can be called innovation. Applied creativity is innovation, if you like, but creativity is the name of the game. So anyway, that's got me to what I'm doing. And right now I'm sitting in my center near Toronto, and we bring people here to do courses. But the biggest thing is experiential. You've got to feel it in order to do it. So that's basically the background. I stumbled into something by being lucky enough to don't know what you're doing, but I'll try this, I'll try that. And little by little, what I really would like to do happened. It happened, and I do that for a living right now. And I enjoy every day that I'm working on it. So there's always research to be done, and always people to train, and there's people to problem solve with. So that's the background.
Very good, very good. So I've had the pleasure of doing your training and actually getting to experience it. And one of the things that really stood out for me was, and you touched on it earlier, is most people, when they're working on creativity or innovation of any kind, and innovations become one of those kinds of words that it means different things to different people. Right. So I understand why you use applied creativity. But if I recall, one of the key fundamentals is that I believe Einstein said, if I had an hour to save the planet, I'd spend 55 minutes defining the problem.
Yeah.
And what I noticed during your sessions that I've participated in is you spend a rigorous amount of time defining the
Yeah.
problem. Can you
Yeah,
speak to that?
yeah, that was my discovery. All kinds of very smart people at Procter and Gamble, PhDs in chemistry, whatever, but they were jumping from the problem they thought they had into solutions. They did not know how to define the problem. And I discovered this, and this was actually the biggest aha I had, and the biggest successes that I had with working with people, where they just did not know how to go through systematically from got a problem, I want to understand the problem and discover what the problem really is. And that's called conceptualization. They didn't know how to do that. And the reason that I was so successful in that job was people recognized that and would have to bring me in. So that was critical. And it's a very hard thing to do for a lot of people because they're used to just jumping from a got a problem into action. There's back and forth and back and forth. And simplicity is key. When I did leave, I said, I've got to give myself a branding. And I thought, what am I really teaching? And I brainstormed a bunch of words, and one was the idea of simple. It's called thinking simple. And so basically I said, what I get people to do is to sit down and think simply, not use big highfalutin words, but simple. And I made this, it was called simplex. And I've expanded that to simplexity. It's the art of thinking simple, which means when you're defining the problem, think simple, think simple. So that was very large for me. And one of the problems that you mentioned is all our business that we've done has been by referral. It's so hard to explain to people, what do you do? Well, we help people solve problems. Oh yeah, so big deal. But if somebody says, I don't know what this guy does, but he really helped us, you ought to talk to him. That's a reference. And then when you get together with them, you have to say, what is it that you want? And if he says, I want innovation, well, that's a starting point, but we have to find out what he really means by innovation. And we define the problem that the company has, and out comes what the problems really are under that umbrella. And one of the most famous things that I did was there was a product called I'll have to tell the quick story. It's
Sure.
a Procter and Gamble, and along comes a new product called Irish Spring, which almost everybody knows. It's everywhere, and it's basically a competitor to anything P&G does. So we had a bunch of engineers. R&D at Procter and Gamble was mostly engineering. We had a whole bunch of people trying to make it was stripes, green stripes, and they showed a guy with a knife, and you could see the stripes, and this was magic. It was going to really help you feel better. So we get our R&D guys going, and what they're doing is trying to make a better green stripe bar. Bang, one after another, bang, another better green stripe bar. And everything they come up with is about equal to Irish Spring. People say it's about the same. So I said, we don't know what we're doing. So we got together and we said, let's start with how might we make a better green stripe bar? Is that okay? Yep. Now we have a process called why, what's stopping. And if I say, why might we want to make a better green stripe bar? You get an answer of some kind. How might we this or that? And they had trouble answering that question. Why would you want to make a better green stripe other than ticking it off? So they had trouble answering that question. And I said, okay, let's try something different. Let's pretend that you're a consumer. You're a consumer. From a consumer standpoint, why might we want to make a better green stripe bar? They thought, and somebody said, people want to feel more refreshed. Ta-da! That ended up, how might we make a more refreshing bar? That was huge. If you want to hear an explosion, it was all over Cincinnati, everywhere. And that broke through. And that's the idea of problem definition. You're finding out what you're really trying to do. And then out of that, quickly, we create a product called Toast, which was blue and white, swirly, et cetera, and it beat Irish Spring in a blind test, which is what you had to do, and we went off. Now, that's the quickest way I can tell the story about what problem definition is all about. And so that very, very big. And we've refined that, and all of our courses that we teach are how can I use this process myself? How could I facilitate other people to use this process in groups? Level 3, how do I introduce this process to my entire organization? So we do this not when we're sitting together for a 4-hour session, but day to day. So we can say, how might we? And that we've trademarked the howmightwe.com. And this I've taught to all kinds of people, Google and all kinds of other people who are using the phrase, how might we? And the design people, design thinking people, we do design thinking, only don't call it that. And it's basically solving problems, which is a gateway to innovation. And so the biggest successes we had were with Frito-Lay, Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company said, look, I know you're still at P&G, but we might entice you to come out. We've got a problem where we're like, the Japanese are killing us, and we got to get people engaged. So we want you to help us do employee involvement. And I said, I don't know if that's, I do create, and I said, you do employee involvement. That's what we want. And basically we trained the entire manufacturing area to problem solve together, get people involved, engaged. And what that led to was our creative problem solving profile. Well, I did some pilot sessions, and they went really, really well at with real people at Ford. And they said, if there's a way that you could find a way that our people get excited, can go home and tell their family about it, or tell their colleagues about it. And that led me to develop the profile, the innovation profile. And it was something that they could fill out and discover what their style was, whether it was generating, conceptualizing, optimizing, or implementing. It was brand new to them, and they could quickly explain the problem, the process, which is so hard to explain to anybody, but they could experience the process. And that led to the discovery of the creative problem solving profile, or the innovation profile, which we use all over the place. And it basically makes it very simple. If you want to know what the innovation process is to generate new problems, define them well, conceptualize, get an optimal solution, and then implement it. And if you've done all those, you are on the way to being a more creative organization. And the whole idea is to get that in the DNA. This is what we do all the time. And the generation is critical, which is, instead of looking at problems as problems, you look at what problems could I solve that nobody else cares about or even doesn't even know about. That's where the creativity starts, is discovering problems, not solutions. If you discover the right problems, then you can define them, and then you get into solutions. So that became our stock and trade. So we use an 8-step process, but it's really based on the 4 basic stages that we have. So
Very
yeah,
good.
so
my experience, Min, was that when the problem is very well defined and it lands in the room, like you talked about at P&G and Ford, and they actually get it, they get what problem they're solving, the solution's almost, I won't say it's automatic, but it's right there. It's
absolutely
right.
We call it conceptualization because it has defining the problem. Once you got it, the solutions start flowing out. They start flowing out right off the bat. And that's because you put all that effort into defining the problem and everybody agreeing and thinking it through. And then you get into optimization, where you start taking those ideas and making them into real life solutions. And you get the best solution you can. And then it's passed on to implementation. And we have in every organization, there are people who like those 4 styles, we call them styles, differently from one another. There are people who a major part in our society, about 40% of people are implementers. They love doing, and only a small number of people like generating. And that led us to the Harvard Business Review article, we said, the problem we're having is that we are only, people know us by awareness, by referral. How could we expand this and tell more people some way in what we do? And that's where the idea came, the Harvard Business Review article. And if we could explain to people through Harvard, and we could convince Harvard to what do we do? Is there some way that might entice people to say, maybe we should try doing what they're doing? So it took us a long time to write the article, myself and 2 colleagues, one from Harvard and one from McMaster. And it was called The 4 Styles of Creativity. And the idea is you need them all. You need, if you're going to have an innovative organization, you need to have people who like to discover new problems. Pat them on the back. Don't pretend they're a problem. That's good. Bring in the problems. And then we need people who can conceptualize, and we need people who can optimize, and then we need people to implement. If you do all those, you are basically innovating. You've got an innovative organization, and it's going on all the time. You don't say, why do we take next month and innovate? No, it's something you do every day. It's every day. You problem solve every day. And so we wrote the article, and it was hard. We had to get the Harvard people to understand what it was before they could then try to other people what it was. And so that's one of our most important things that we do is we introduce people to the profile. And if that's the thin edge of the wedge, if they understand the profile, maybe they'll say, I'd like to learn more about how the whole innovation process works. So that's how that one came about. And we only wrote that, we're talking about 40 years worth of stuff, and we're just scratching the edges of how do we tell people what we do. And so when Derek, you came along and said, we can get you to talk to some people, that's wonderful. We got a chance to explain to them a little bit about what we do and what we're trying to do. So here are some things that are important. Like people will ask me to come on like Derek does, and they'll say things like, tell us more about how things work. And there's certain things. One is called get the right people. If you're going to try to innovate, solve a problem, get the right people in the room. And you have to have people who are very knowledgeable in whatever it is you're trying to do. And in addition, you want to get people who have the different styles as well. But if you don't have the right people in the room, you're dead. So you got to have the right knowledge. But then what you need then is, okay, we got the right people in the room. We need a process by which we can work together. And we work people through the process where they start with a fuzzy situation, fact-finding, problem definition, best ideas, best optimized idea, and implementation. We go around the wheel because people don't know how to, they know they'd like to work together, but a lot of times they have trouble because they're all on different places. Somebody is planning and somebody is implementing and somebody is conceptualizing. But if we're all on the same page and we work our way through the process, they collaborate beautifully, but nobody ever taught them to collaborate. And they just tend to discount here, discount there because they don't understand. But when people do understand, there's a process, boom, they're off and running, and they really like working together. So collaboration is a key to innovation, but people have to learn how to collaborate. And here's a process by which they can do it. The other thing is you need leadership. You can't just say, oh, I'm the boss, so I'm going to delegate this to a bunch of other people, and I'll hire a bunch of people who are artists and things like that. You can't do that. You've got to take the lead. And when you ask for innovation, you've got to tell people what you mean by innovation or creativity. And you've got to be able to also I'll take the risk. I'll take the risk of getting my organization involved in something crazy called creativity. If it doesn't work, they'll laugh at me. But one of the hardest things for organizations is to have a leader who wants to do more than make my numbers. I'll be like every other bank. I'll be like you've got to, who's going to step forward and say, I think we could be different from anybody else. And what he's doing is he's discovering a problem. He's discovering a problem. We could be different from everybody else. That person then owns the problem. And if you don't have ownership in that group, you can't delegate this to a bunch of people who do design work and stuff like that. That's not their problem. And you need to have whoever's owning the problem in that room to make something happen when you're solving problems. And that's critical. And you can't just say, how might we make the world a better place? And they got a bunch of people. No, that's a nice start. But now you got, what's the problem you're going to define? How's it going to look? How's it going to fit your company? And that's a big part. So if we get a call from someone who said, I'd like to try, we do something called a pre-consult. We meet with them to find out what is the problem. We put them through the process, why, what's stopping, challenge mapping, to help them discover what do they really mean by innovation. Oh, this is what I meant. And they also see, do you see the way we work? That's the way we like your people to work. Define the problem, talk together, you work together. And then that leader says, okay, I'll take, here's how I will introduce this kind of thing in my company. And it'll be different for every company. It'll be totally different depending on what the problem is that they're trying to solve. Why would any thinking manager pay a bunch of money to train people unless it's connected to whatever problem he's trying to solve? It doesn't make any sense. So what's the, what problem are you trying to solve? How will we measure it? How will you know? Like at Frito-Lay, the problem was to save $500 million in 5 years by engaging everybody at every level in solving problems. And everybody knew that was the goal. Somehow, cumulatively, we're going to solve 500 million problems. And then we trained everybody, starting with the senior management level. They had to buy into it 3 days. We like this idea of listening to each other, etc. And then we get this pocket going, and we start to identify opportunities all over the organization that we could cut down inflation by just putting our minds to it. Because the real problem was inflation. Everybody was accepting cost increases, and instead of trying to team them down. And we did it by involving everybody in solving problems that made flatten the curve of inflation. So that was one example. That would work at Frito-Lay. It might not work anywhere else. It wasn't at Ford. Ford wanted to engage people in solving problems to improve quality. And different people will have different, but you've got to know why. And you can't just buy something off the shelf and say, well, this guy says he can do. That isn't the way it works. It works with problem solving and problem definition. What is your problem that you're trying to solve in your organization, and how will we go about it? How do we engage people? But it always involves people, because that's what everything involves people. They're the people that make things happen. And what you want to do is make sure they got the skills of solving problems. They know how to work together, and this makes them have so much fun. At Ford, they said so often they think we're supposed to check our brains at the door, but they were in the training that we do. You solve real problems. They're not fictitious problems. So what problems are we in Ford having? And we take those problems, and everybody comes up with solutions which get implemented because they're needed. And so it's so much fun when I'm being listened to, and I'm being asked to use my brains to solve a problem. It makes me feel good. So there's an awful lot of feeling of I really feel good because I have tools to make myself better. That's critical.
One of the pillars of your 4 types is when the room knows what type you are, there's more generosity for listening to you, because they understand that you're an implementer, or they understand you're a generator or an optimizer. So that level of communication is critical to the training that you do.
Absolutely.
I think it gives people room to fully express themselves and to be heard, given their expertise, and the room will it really is a communication. It is like that's one of the pillars of your program, is you get people actually communicating authentic things from their point of view, and you get the room to let it in. And the other tool you use is the how might we? I'd
Yeah.
like you to just explain a little more about the psychology behind how might we?
Yeah. Um, well, first of all, the idea of if everybody knows uh, what, if everybody knows that this guy really likes defining problems, they have it's called a language. They have a language of innovation or language of creativity. And they have a language they can use. They can quickly say to each other, uh, before we implement, could we just do a little bit more work on optimizing these things? When we communicate that way, we know we actually, okay, let's do that. And or somebody says, before we jump into ideas, can we take a little time to define the problem? Or somebody could say, you know, we haven't had any new problems for a while. Why don't we spend some time looking for some new problems that we could turn into new products? So that's a key. And it's the idea of simplicity. You cannot solve a problem if you're not sure what the other guy's talking about. So you got to use simple language, very simple language. And if you don't understand, you have to say, I don't really understand that. Could you just explain it to me? And as soon as you do that, you're also honoring the other person. Yeah, I like what you said. Just tell me a little more about it. So these behaviors are critical, and they're not for fun. They're for real things, and etc. Now, the other part of your question was how might we? This I discovered at Procter & Gamble early in the game, where I was asked to help smart people solve problems, and they did not understand the idea of going from where they were into solution. They needed to stop at problem definition. And so little by little, the idea came out. We state our problems in a very positive way. It starts with how might we? So how might we reduce costs? How might we develop the project go faster? And when you say how might we, it's very there's a lot of initiative there. There's, yeah, we'd like that. So the might says anything's possible. Might, anything's possible. It's us. And how might we? So the idea is to get people out of content, which is what we're doing, and move them into process, which is how are we doing it? And many people are not aware of that. They spent their lives getting trained in content, engineering, whatever it is, but they've never been taught a process of how we think. That's a critical piece. So we try to get people to understand that. And when you're working with the groups of people, it really helps to have a facilitator to help separate the process from the content. And so people can worry on one versus the other. But if you're just alone as a group, you have to be careful of knowing process versus content. And this little profile that we have helps a whole lot in helping us through. So if I get a new group of people, and maybe that we're training or something, say, how many of you have been to a meeting in the last month or so that you thought was a total waste of time? All the hands go up. All the hands go up. And what are some reasons? Well, one of the biggest reasons is they say, well, we didn't get any results. So we went for 2 hours and got no results. And this happens all the time. People go to meetings and there's no results. Well, isn't that interesting? So then I get people say, let's do this. Let's put the word results down and an equal sign. One thing we need to get results is we have the knowledge. We have to have the knowledge. Do we have the right people in the room? Okay, good. In addition to that, we have to have a process. If you get 10 people, different people in the room, you've got 10 different processes of thinking. And so we need a process by which we can consistently work together. That's the how. So the knowledge is the what, and the process is the how. And we use the 4-stage process as a quick way to introduce the profile as the process. And then we need some skills. We need to diverge together, converge together, defer judgment. Those are skills. And then we need some tools, like brainstorming would be a tool. It's simply a tool. And if you don't know how to use the tool, it's useless. And then we need to honor each other's profiles. And and build on those profiles. So it's like a battery, positive and negative. So if I'm a generator, and I can play with an optimizer and we work together, boom, we got ideas we never would have thought of. It's like an explosion. And so we take advantage of that, not try to downplay it, but use it. So that's it. So now we have an innovative results equation. These are the things we need to do. And the big thing is the problem definition is going to be, how might we? So when we get a problem, what we do is we do fact finding around it, and we turn those facts into challenges. So in the world of questions, there are three kinds of questions. One kind of question is fact finding. If I say, how many people live in Canada? I'm expecting a fact. Somebody says, well, for 40 million. I asked a fact, I got a fact. Another one is decision finding. Should I buy the Toyota or buy the Ford? I'm expecting a decision. So that's a decision finding question, should. When I want to find ideas, it's totally different. We have to ask an idea finding question. So if I say, how might we get more people to come to our meetings? What does that spawn? Somebody says, well, we could give them a gift. Somebody says we could threaten them. We could send them they're giving me a bunch of ideas. So when I ask the question, how might I, I'm asking for ideas. And because I use the word might, not should, might, got a bunch of ideas. It's okay. And it's a pleasant thing when we're just sharing ideas, really good. So it's a great question to use, how might I or how might we? And we call that an idea finding question. So I discovered that there's a hugely powerful tool early in my Procter & Gamble career. And everywhere I go, people like the idea of how might we. And you could misuse it by asking too much. How might I save the world hunger? It's more than that. You have to work on defining the problem really well. And it's always done in a positive way. How might we? So if I say, what's stopping us from reducing homelessness in our city? There would be a bunch of things. Well, one thing is, what's one thing stopping us? Well, somebody might say, well, a lot of people are too busy to attack the problem. Good. How might we get more people less busy and willing to attack the problem? What else might be stopping us? Somebody says, well, another thing stopping us is we got more homeless people than ever before, huge numbers. How might we handle the large number of people? How might we budget for the large number of people? How might we reduce the number of people coming in? So everything is given an okay, and we develop a map. We call it a challenge map. The upper challenges are the more, shall we say, more strategic challenges, like how might we build a better city? And the more tactical challenges are at the bottom, like how might we build more subways or whatever we do. So that challenge mapping is a huge tool. I would say that 99% of the people in the world are not aware of it. Everybody is focused on get to a solution as quick as you can. Carl Jung was a great psychiatrist, and he said something very profound. Thinking is hard. That's why most people judge. It's so easy to judge. Now we got social media all over the place who asks people to judge. And that is, they don't know how to think. So what the business that we're in really is, we call it revolutionizing how people think. That's the real business we're in. We try to give people a way to start thinking about things as opposed to judging. Anyway, we're giving people like, oh, I'll look that up on Google, look that up on, all they do is go, like, but they don't know how to think. And that's going to be a bigger and bigger problem as we get kids who are brought up on social media. This is their world. And one problem that I know that managers I talk to is getting people, now that pandemic's over, we're getting new people. A lot of new people coming in need to be told what to do. They don't really know what to do. And we're into like robotics. We're waiting for somebody else to tell them what to do. We've got to get people thinking for themselves. And a lot of times, I think new people.
Is that one of the problems of this internet digital
I think it
generation?
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
and yeah,
what I noticed coming out of the 90s, where you had good marketing people who understood strategy and thinking and creativity at the level you're talking about. But they didn't know technology, and they didn't know social media, and they didn't know search, and they didn't know pay-per-click. They didn't understand all that stuff. So
yeah,
this new generation came in who understood all that stuff, and they called themselves digital marketers, but they had no fundamental training in how to think, how to strategize, and how to be a marketer,
yeah,
right? And now
yeah,
those people, 20 years later, those people are now in charge, and they
yeah,
don't have the fundamental uh, muscle that you're talking about.
yeah, yeah,
And
very true.
and we do find marketing does not have the status in organizations that it had 20 years ago, and I think that's the root of it, Dr.
Yeah,
Basadur. I think
yeah, yeah,
you just nailed on it, like a incredible point, because we have to be taught how to think.
yeah. Very, very true. And that's going to get worse with AI. Now we got AI on the thing, and how are we going to handle that? And that's a thinking problem of its own. How do we use it? How do we how do we not abuse it? All that kind of stuff is going to get even harder when people depend on something else do my thinking for me and just give me an answer, or worse, I'll wait till my boss gives me the answer. I will do my work, but where does it come from? They will tell me what to do. And now that's going to be a huge load on anybody with that kind of responsibility. Wouldn't it be lovely if I had people who could think down below, and they would tell me, you know, I thought of this problem. I thought, instead of just saying we should do this and we should do that, I had this problem. I thought it through, and this is what it comes out. And I'd like to present you with how I thought about it, how it came out. Makes it very easy for me as the boss to say, go for it. But when you come in and say, I want $10,000 to buy a new computer, now I'm on defense. I have no idea where that came from, and I have to start asking questions. This guy wants a yes or no. Tell me a little more about it. Tell me what you're trying to do. What problem are you trying to solve with the new computer? And sometimes if you take it through, they might find something they didn't really need a computer. It's something else that they need to do. That's the same thing in manufacturing. There are all kinds of people doing Six Sigma and Lean and that, where they take a process and they try to milk it to save a few pennies here or make it a little faster. Often the process they're working on, if they would step back and say, what is that process supposed to do? They might redefine the problem and come back with a totally new process that is way above what they had before. But we're taught to go into a room and just generate all kinds of ways that we could save a few dollars here, make that better, but it's always the same manufacturing process. If we extract that to what is the process doing, what is its job to be done, what is supposed to do, then we could find new ways. How might we do that job in a different way? And that we'd like to move people. Yes, it's good to do the efficiency stuff over here, but there's also this other part here called problem definition, problem finding. And most people in organizations are not aware of that. They're simply aware of the implementation and the optimization of what we're doing right now, as opposed to stepping back and saying, how might we make this thing go better? How might we make this faster? So that's also the way the world is right now, heavily focused on the left-hand side, which is how to doing stuff as opposed to thinking, are we doing the right thing?
Love it, which is really what led to us using people's personal information in ways that we shouldn't have in marketing, because we didn't stop to say, should we? We looked and we said, can we?
Yeah,
And because
yeah,
technology allowed it, we started doing whatever we wanted with people's information, not realizing there's a real person behind that.
Yeah.
And what I'm noticing online now, and I've been on a bit of a rant about it, is marketing's job is to tickle them pink. And yet in digital marketing, we're doing things that we know piss people off. We know that it offends people. We know remarketing. Nobody likes to be stalked and followed and ads flashing, and nobody likes that. Like, what are we thinking? We have to really stop. I addressed a group in the Digimarcon show in Toronto a couple of months ago, a group of 350 or so marketers, and I said, how many in this room are doing things that annoys your customer? And half the room put up their hand. And I looked at the other half and I said, I think the rest of you are lying. But we talked at length about some of the things they were doing, and I said, stop that. And they said, we can't, because our boss expects the numbers. So
Yeah.
we've got to drive the numbers. And it's like, well, you're driving the wrong KPI. What you're really after are business outcomes, not
Yeah.
likes or and it's kind of crazy, because I think we've gotten I think we've lost the plot as marketers, and I really hope some thinking gets put back in the
Yeah.
process.
It
So
really boils down, what result are you trying to achieve? What's the result you're trying to achieve? And then you say, how might we achieve that result? As
Yes.
opposed to just grinding out the usual stuff that we send out. And we might find brand new ways we could get that result if we put our thinking together.
Yes, and I've had many clients over the years as an ad agency say, we need to do this, and I go, why? So I think one of the most valuable questions is why.
Yeah.
Like, what are we trying to achieve, right?
Yeah. Why might you want to? Why might you want to?
Yeah, and we're not stopping enough to answer the whys.
Yeah.
We're just in do mode. And I think one of the things I do love about your process and your thinking is that it moves people out of the do mode until they're clear about what they're doing, and then re-engages the do mode.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's no good. It's no good thinking it all through and then not doing anything.
Yeah. So if people are
complete,
if people are heavily implementation oriented, like for example, fast food managers,
yes,
heavily implementation oriented. And I was asked by Tri Global to come in, and what it was is, couldn't you spend just a minute or two conceptualizing what's the problem I'm trying to solve, and then go do it? And they got it. They understood. So it's not a difficult thing to understand. Yeah, but sometimes half the time I'm solving the wrong problem. So if it took 5 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes just to say, what am I really trying to do? Why, how might I this? How might I that? I might go back with a very different solution and keep the customer for a long time, just pulling them out. But they get it. They got it. It's that simple. Implementation versus conceptualization. They also get it about problem finding. If you keep on waiting, other people are going to find the problems. They're going to find them before you do. You make an active. You've got to be out there looking for customers' problems, talking to customers. What are their problems? And you discover some nuggets, and then that gives you an edge. That gives you an edge to go forward with. So these are communication tools that people can learn and use. Keep it simple. Keep it simple, and try to avoid gigantic. Here's how you do innovation. We'll get $5 million. We're going to say they never work, because they don't get at what the root problem, what you're really trying to do.
That's kind of my take of how the governments are typically treating innovation. It's a they just keep throwing more money at it.
They do. What do they call them? Incubation centers. So they bring in more and more bureaucracy to help people do, and they don't know how to do it themselves. Is there a chance of giving people how they would take the profile if they wanted to? Is
Yeah,
there a way
by
we
all
could,
means. Yeah, by all means. Why don't you put in the chat,
Brenda, could,
and we will add it in the follow-up email as well to everybody that if they log in at basadurprofile.com, that they can fill out the profile themselves.
yeah, that'd be great. And if they're interested in talking about it, we're here to talk about it anytime. We
Yes.
know it's a wonderful way to get people to get it, at least to get a little idea of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, here's a good question from the attendees is it necessary to have the leaders of the organization engaged in this process from the start?
It depends on if you're trying to change the whole company, absolutely. But if you're talking about one area, whoever is leading that, whoever is leading that area,
Oh, great
whoever is
distinction.
responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great
so
distinction.
like once in a while, you get a you get a Ford Motor Company, okay? And then sometime you're gonna get somebody's running a department or another thing, even team leaders. This is a wonderful thing we have all kinds of team leaders everywhere. If you're a team leader, you're the leader. And this is a way that you can get your team to understand and work better together. And so, yeah, leadership is critical, but it can be at that level.
And if you're focused on business outcomes
Excuse me.
as a team leader, you can actually focus your entire team on business outcomes.
Yeah, yeah.
The right KPIs, because I think it's a huge problem in business is they've got their eye on the wrong ball. And that starts at the leadership. And
Yeah, you could have your one thing that people, yeah. And so if you're the leader and you get your team to fill out the profile, you've got, they talk about it, they'll like it. They'll like the idea that we're different and then give you a chance to let's work together better. So we don't like to use the word team because that's got all kinds of kumbaya to it. But this is like the real way you build a team, is to help them think together, get some results together, and so the results will speak for themselves and they will like it. So
yeah,
that's a great
important
question.
distinction. This is not about kumbaya. This is about business results. And this
Yeah,
is about
yeah.
moving your organization forward.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so that was a great question about leadership. Leadership can be here, and but the main point is somebody wants to make it happen. You know,
yeah, I love it.
somebody wants to get the result. So if you're a leader in an organization, what results am I? Ask yourself what result. See, if I'm in a company of 10,000 people, how in the world am I going to distinguish myself? Because we're all doing the same thing. The one that is the guy who says, or the girl, what's a problem that everybody else is avoiding? And that person steps forward and grabs that problem. That's called grabs that problem, solves it. Now you're on the way to being seen as a leader. That's leadership, is making things happen. It could be called change management. That's a fancy word for solving problems and doing things differently. And it's not done by telling people what we're going to do tomorrow. It's like engaging people in making the change, not hoisting the change on them. That's what people mean by managing change. Bring them in and tell them what we're going to do to them. No, it's engaging people in making change and making that a fun thing to do.
So it's been great, Dr. Basadur. This has been wonderful. Love your way of thinking. And if I wanted to reach out to you, how would I connect with you?
Well, the biggest way is to send me an email, which is min, M-I-N, at basadur.com. And Basadur is BASADUR.com. And Brenda just sent that to all panelists on the chat.
Yeah,
So
very good.
we learn by talking to people, and so it's a two-way street. So anything you want to talk about. The other way would be to, that was to send the email or just telephone. I can even give you a telephone number, 905
Please do.
905-407-4903.
Very
And
good.
would
Very
love to
good.
have love to have a conversation and trying to learn something from you.
Very good. Well, it's been a pleasure. I thank you for your time, Dr.
Thank
Basadur.
you.
I wish you all the best in your work. It sounds fascinating. I love this, as you know.
Yeah, great
So-
working with you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and thanks for
Pleasure.
making this, thanks for making the opportunity for me to talk to people. Thanks so much.
It's our pleasure. We need to get people
Okay.
thinking again.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you,
Bye.
and have a wonderful day.
you too.